All right. So again, my name is Ana Valenzuela. I'm the Family and Community Support Coordinator with Community Connections. And so I'm just going to share a little bit about Community Connections. If you're unfamiliar with our services, we do provide quality child services at no cost for families with children who have special needs. Now, these activities or programs that we have, I'm going to just share a few. We have tennis, we have Axe Junior Theater, we have basketball teams, cheerleading teams, first tee golf, music, martial arts, art, rough football, sport clinics, team game groups, top soccer, and we also do young adult social groups. With the umbrella of Community Connections, just recently, we've started the parent programs and family support systems. And so we just started a yoga program, a kickboxing program, and those are at no cost for the families as well. They do receive quality childcare during these programs. Just to kind of give you a rough idea, we're in 11 counties. We have 36 different programs running at different times, different semesters, and altogether we have roughly 75 directors running those programs. And so I'm just very thankful for all the support systems. My oldest child started the program 6 years ago, and he has a neurological disorder. And so Community Connections has been amazing, has been a great support system for my child and for my family. We bring these parent education webinars through collaboration with ADSA. So Deanne, the president of the Arkansas Down Syndrome Association, is not here today, but I will leave her information, email on the chat, and also know that you can always go on the website and you have the opportunity to look at all those resources that are available. Also today we have two great speakers with us. And so I'm going to actually give them the floor and they're going to introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves. So take over, ladies.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Ashley Bell, and I've been here at the Department of Education in the Office of Special Education for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in September. Before I started my career as a high school English teacher and journalism teacher. And then I spent about 7 years doing that. And then I moved to an inclusive post-secondary education program at UAPTC. There is a program for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities at the culinary school called the 3D program. And I was lead faculty there for 2 years and director for 2 years. I was there about 5 years. Anyway, and then went from there to here. And so I'm on the monitoring and program effectiveness team. So what we do is kind of helps districts and families with technical assistance as well as compliance. And I'll let Miss Stella tell you more about what we do.
I'm Miss Stella Hunt, and I've been here for 6 years. I've taught kindergarten in Seoul, Korea, and I've taught middle school, high school, stateside. And then before I came here for 8 years, I worked with adjudicated youth at Arkansas Juvenile and coordinated all the services there. So, and I have one daughter, she's grown. Yeah, she has kids that are still in school, so she's fighting the fight.
I have a 17-year-old who was diagnosed with autism at 12. So as you can imagine, we had some struggles for 12 years, not really. And then I have had some struggles after that 12 years. So anyway, he'll graduate next month. And then I have a 12-year-old who is just his mother's child and a little scattered. So.
All right. And so today we're really here to talk to you about our big push. And I think it's a push around the United States. I think Arkansas is a little bit behind, but we're trying to catch up. And that is in more inclusive education. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We've used a book that we have linked. Grab it on the back a lot. This book is wonderful. It's called Reimagining Special Education. by Gina Massini Rufo and Julie Costin. And it's very thin, unlike some of the ones we get. And it's just full of great ideas. So we used a lot of their ideas to push us through. So we want to talk about, first of all, why we're looking at inclusive education.
Do you want to start, share your screen, Miss Anna?
No, we can't hear.
Uh-oh. There we are.
Hello?
Hello?
What is that? We're trying to get our slides up.
Okay.
Can't hear you, Anna.
Oh, she's muted. That's okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, so just bear with me. I'm so sorry. I thought I was on there. And were you able to see my screens before?
No.
No, okay, because I did this. Okay, share screen.
Did you pull up the presentation?
I did, and it's saying share. And then once I click on share, it goes to, it says add groups or get link.
Okay, we sent you a link.
Let's see.
Our link real
Let me
quick.
click on here. Let's see if this helps. And I'm sorry, ladies, I'm not very familiar with this whole shebang. Let's see.
That's a bad thing about technology. There's going to be surprises every time.
Okay, so can you see it now or not quite?
Nope.
Okay, so
Sharing your screen is kind of weird. Like
yeah,
when you do it, it's like you almost have to choose.
see, I'm seeing all my options and I'm very sorry because I'm probably making it more difficult, but I
Well,
do
if-
see
Need
options.
to do it without the visuals, we can.
Okay, well, let me try one more thing because I think I know what I'm doing. I do have a few more families joining in. Give me 1 second. And let's see.
But you are able to open the presentation.
Yes, ma'am. I can open it. And so once it pulls up on my screen and then I go back to share screen, it's no longer in share screen. I'm trying to figure out why that is.
I need to be logged into this webinar. It has to do with my kid. I put the volume like almost all the way down. So
let's see, I've muted a few of our participants. Give me 1 second. Hi, Courtney. Courtney Leach is our executive director, so she's on the call today as well.
Hi, Courtney.
So I also sent you the link.
I also have 2 children with IEPs. This is very timely.
Okay, so sorry. I did change the settings to see if, can you share, Ashley?
Oh, let's see.
It does say that multiple participants can share. Is it giving you the option?
Yes. So what I need to
What is the
do
little share?
is, okay, go here and hit share. Wait,
Start slideshow.
There
start.
it is.
slideshow.
Can you see it?
Mm-mm.
Mm.
Was there something?
Let's see. What about now?
Well,
Okay, so I'm screen sharing according to my screens.
Okay.
okay.
General.
Okay, so, okay, they can see it. Can you see it? Courtney Mills just commented.
They can see my screen.
Well, not sure I'm seeing it on my screen. It does say, it is showing.
Great. Okay, so you can see it now?
I believe so. We can start.
Okay.
Did it switch to the new slide?
Okay, so. Let's see.
It might be showing through hers.
Can you see a little girl with wings.
Okay, so we're on that second slide. Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll start now. Sorry about all that. So the book is called Reimagining Special Education, and we like that thought. So you see here a timeline. There's not much on it. Starts with Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954. That was half a century ago. And what that is the separate but inherently equal. So we can't do that. We can't keep our kids separated because of race. And so we've been progressing that way. Everybody knows all about the civil rights. What is the word I'm looking for? The civil rights movement, the changes in the schools. And we, agree with that. But why do we still look at separating students? If we don't separate students because of diversity, because of race, our culture, or many of the other things that we know we don't need to do that, why do we continue to separate our special ed children, our students with disabilities? And so the thought behind this is all that we don't need to look at children with the medical model. And what that is looking at a disability as a pathology or something harmful, something abnormal, something that we need to change. And we still separate those kids out. They're all in the same school, but in a lot of cases, they're separated most of the time, especially some of our children with more serious cognitive disabilities. So we're suggesting that we switch from that medical model to a more of a social model. So rather than looking at a child and saying, here's what that child's disability is, and here's the barriers to them. This is why we have to keep them separated, because of their disability. We need to look at the barrier and decide what we need to change in the school more often, or what the teacher needs to change in the classroom in order to include them. And I'm looking through my notes. I'm trying to make sure I hit on everything. So all the diversity we should look at a disability as another form of diversity. I know we were talking about Ashley's child is on the autism spectrum, and there's so many things he's good at. He's very creative. He's a musician. There's so many things he can contribute, and part of it is because of that disability. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of positives. So when the school system continues the way it has, and you'll see that little boy up there at the top, we've pulled kids out, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little iPad and it's reading to him. So obviously he needs to have text translated to speech, but there is no reason he needs to sit in a room with fewer children and miss out on what's going on in the classroom. And you can tell they're having fun down there in order to get those services he needs. And research has shown this increases learning for everyone. So what we contend is that the educational system treats students with disabilities as abnormal, unhealthy. When they do that, it harms everyone. Students with legitimate disabilities, those who are at risk of inappropriate classification due to a difference in race, ethnicity, language, ability, or socioeconomic status. And all the other stuff, all the other students who are subtly taught that their differences are a liability rather than a gift. So again, that's switching from that medical model. When we use the medical model of disability, educators and other practitioners assume that the disability resides within that individual. It's seen as a problem that has to be fixed. So education is not medicine, and we don't need to think of it any longer that way. What if instead of viewing the disability as a problem that is inherent in the individual, we interpret disability as a result of barriers that exist in our system? Sorry, I stumbled through all that. There you go.
Okay, so can you see the next slide?
Not sure what side we need to be on. Ashley, I can't see them all. So can you tell me where we need to be exactly?
3.
The third one.
There's a little boy in a striped shirt.
Okay, I'm sorry. Like I said, I can't see them all. So the little boy in the striped shirt, here we are.
Okay.
Okay, so this, we want to take a minute, and I know you guys probably, some of you have your cameras on and some of you have talked to us, but I want to have a moment for us to engage with each other and think about what are the characteristics of a traditional good student. So in order to be seen as a good student in our schools, traditionally, what are some characteristics that we've had to go, that have had to fit us?
Do you mean like a student is attentive or engaged with
Yeah.
the teacher and learning, respectful of fellow students around them?
They-
Sitting still.
They
Sorry to
stay.
interrupt you, Courtney.
Yeah.
Sitting
Yes,
still.
sitting still, yeah.
Behind a desk. What's this little boy doing?
Well,
Can
he's
y'all-
unorganized for one thing, which is another thing. They expect everything to be in order, I guess, and
Yeah.
lined up a certain way on his desk, and he's turning around and saying something or looking at a classmate.
All right, so we see this kiddo as not a good student because he's not attentive to the teacher. Looks like he's not engaged in learning. Looks like he is not able to sit still, so other kids are distracted, that kind of thing. So he's not compliant there. He's not fitting the mold.
And notice she said, looks like.
Look, yeah. So the way that we look at that kiddo, if you go to the next slide, can y'all see my slides or do you see Anna's slides?
I'm able to, I mean, my screen has the whole slide on here, so I'm thinking we can see mine. Yes.
Okay.
Are you
okay.
seeing boxes?
And the boxes say gen ed, resource, self-contained, pull out, co-teach. So this is the traditional model of education. This is the way our system is built. And in this system, that kid has to fit in one of those boxes. And we're saying, we're wanting everybody to kind of look at this in a different way and go to the next slide where we throw those boxes out, where there's a big X on the boxes. Because that kiddo is not, that's not a strengths-based model there. That's a deficit-based model. And we want to look at kids by a strength, through the lens of a strength-based model where they can build upon those strengths to access their education. All right, so if you will go to the slide where you have Tyson.
There's a little boy with a backpack.
Giving a
With his
thumbs up.
So a lot of things that go along with those boxes are like, well, we have 50 minutes for each class. Either they're in class or they're in resource or they stay in a self-contained room all day. There's some things that frameworks that we've built that we built them. I mean, that's all there is to it. The law doesn't constrain us to those guides. So here's Tyson. I'm going to read you a story about Tyson. Tyson was expected to fit the mode of what it means to be a good student by traditional standards. Tyson is an energetic and witty African-American boy who attends kindergarten in a predominantly white school district. He lives with his 2 teenage siblings and mother, who works the night shift at a 24-hour supermarket prior to kindergarten. Prior to kindergarten, Tyson was watched by his grandmother. He didn't attend preschool, and despite lack of formal early childhood education, Tyson entered kindergarten with strong reading skills. Almost immediately after he started kindergarten, his mother began to receive phone calls from the school. Tyson is calling out in class. Tyson won't stay in line. Tyson got mad and ran down the hall. The principal called a meeting with Tyson's mother and shared that Tyson was unable to attend to the teacher during instruction and was always out of his seat and calling out. Following the meeting, the principal assigned a paraprofessional to support Tyson, but the behavior only escalated. When Tyson began to engage in negative behaviors, he was removed from class, and the paraprofessional attempted to instead work with him in the main office. The third week of September, when picking up Tyson, his mother was approached in the parking lot by the professionals who were assigned to work with the child. His kindergarten teacher, guidance counselor, principal, and paraprofessional. First of all, think about being met in the parking lot with all those people. Tyson's mom was presented a form that requested Tyson be evaluated for special education due to his attention and behavior issues. Luckily, Tyson's mother knew better because she knew her son. She contacted the superintendent and expressed her concerns. Before testing for special ed, additional strategies for Tyson were implemented in the general education classroom. A behavior specialist supported the teacher in examining her own practices to be less teacher-focused and more student-centered. Proactive strategies that allow movement for Tyson and which gave him the opportunities to contribute were critical in better engaging him in instruction. When Tyson's reading level was found to be much higher than most students in his class, appropriate materials were provided at his level. The principal stopped calling Tyson's mom when he acted out and instead worked with their staff on new ways to support Tyson. While this story resulted in Tyson's positive adjustment to school and his testing for gifted education, it could have turned out much differently. And there's one thing I want to kind of pull out and comment on. You know, the first thing they did was provide a paraprofessional. And really, that's discouraged a lot of the time because what that para is trying to do is fix that child to fit into the teacher's frameworks. We're trying to, you know, keeping them on task. And what if in the classroom we change those frameworks? And so that para was not needed, because a para is a lot more restrictive. The child becomes dependent upon a para. And so they made these other changes. Or this kid could have been followed around. And in kindergarten, that's great. And then sometimes paras are really needed. I'm not saying that, but especially for behavioral issues, it gets to be a social issue if you have a para.
Yeah, Miss Lon, I talked about this yesterday, and when I was in the, at the inclusive post-secondary ed program, you could, I'm not saying that everyone thought this all the time, but it was, people are just traditionally under the idea that another human has to provide the special education.
There has to be two people in the room.
Yeah.
A co-teacher or
And-
a para
And not
or
saying that that
one-on-one
model
aid.
doesn't work, but you can't, a human is not always the answer. Instead, you don't have to have another human provide special education. You can provide the accommodations and modifications in the planning piece and make that more accessible to the student so that student is more self-directed.
You need to make sure the one-on-one isn't keeping that child from being more from growing and developing to be more independent.
That's right.
Okay, so what they call it in this book, Reimagining Education, is Tyson's Restory.
So on that next slide, you have a chart there.
So Tyson's perceived weakness was he couldn't sit still, but Tyson Restoried was he was a bodily kinesthetic learner. He learned by getting up and moving around. A weakness was that he calls out, but when restoried, you could say he's eager to share his thoughts. Weakness, runs around the room. Restored, he's physically active. Attention issues, does best when actively engaged in student-centered tasks. And we're not just saying change the adjectives you use to make it sound better. We're saying look at those restories, as they call them, and say, well, he'll be able to learn this way, or I can use this in class because he really has a strength in that, and he tends to lean toward that in his learning. So when we focus on weakness, we slip into a medical model of education again, where we have to fix him so he fix the classroom. We have to get a para to fix him or stay on him and keep him where he fits the classroom. We're likely to provide Tyson with the behavior chart with prizes, prizes compliance. Perhaps he'll earn stickers for sitting in his chair or computer time by raising his hand. We might assign him with a pair to keep him on task without actually teaching him the social skills to support the behavior. To limit distractions, maybe we'll sit him next to the teacher. These sound like familiar accommodations or modifications. Actually, they're all accommodations. Maybe we'll sit him next to the teacher, although he may benefit from those incentives to stay on task. He may enjoy the computer time. We must begin to provide inclusive support by looking at the environment and seeing what's problematic for him and thinking about changing that environment. When we construct an inclusive support that builds upon his strengths, examine our classroom practices first and build on the students' positive attributes. By restoring students to focus on strengths, all educators can identify the values that are placed on certain behaviors. And we're going to get into briefly how to check those IEPs and how to approach those IEPs.
So if you go to the slide where it says popular argument and there's a guy holding up a sign that has an X there, this is an argument that we hear really, I mean, it's a really popular argument right now. Every day I get calls from parents, and rightly so. It's scary that say children need smaller, more inclusive, specialized settings to benefit from education. That is not just parents, that is just kind of a belief system that we have inherently through our schools and our homes. So that's the argument. And this book that we have been reading and also years of research has been debunked. Over decades, research has proven again and again that all students benefit more in a general education setting. So on page 30 of the book that we've been reading, it quotes Dr. Thomas Ayer. He's a professor of Harvard University and former director of the Office of Special Education Programs. At 2019, he was at the World Down Syndrome Congress, and this is his quote: "Kids with disabilities who have been included in general education have higher reading scores, do better in mathematics, and are more apt to be employed and live independently in the community when they leave school." People still in debate whether it's, or people are still in debate as to whether or not it's the right thing to do. Stop the debate. The evidence is in. So we've talked a lot now about what's, why we think inclusion is important. And so now we'll give you a little how do we make this shift? If you go to the next slide, you see a little girl dancing on the steps of the school. This is Joy's story. In the book, it's Joey's story, but we changed it to Joy. Joy is a student with Down syndrome who's in a high school biology class. In the class, this standard unit is about genetics, where the teacher's teaching heredity, Punnett squares, meiosis, and mitosis. Joy's team decided that rather than focusing on every single standard of the unit, they would identify a major goal for her. And that was to understand that genes are passed down through families. So not only was she successful in that classroom because they focused on an essential goal that tied to the unit, also this provided the opportunity for her to learn more about her own disability that resulted from a triplicate of chromosome 21.
And this was in the gen ed classroom.
In the gen ed classroom. So then Joy conducted additional research on her own and presented that research about Down syndrome to the rest of the class. So that is one way, is focusing on essential standards. And Miss is going to tell you about our next story, Abby's story.
Okay, this is Abby. Actually, this little girl is on Netflix right now. But it was hard to find.
I knew I recognized her.
Yeah. So Abby is a 5th grade student. She looks a little older. Identified as having an SLD in reading, a specific learning disability. So in 3rd grade, she received 90 minutes of reading instruction each day in a special ed classroom. That's a lot of instruction to be pulled out of the general ed. For 2 years, she was instructed with an alternate curriculum in a textbook series that was one level below her grade. she did not meet the gains. Why? She received a life sentence in a classroom where she wasn't receiving the same instruction as her same age peers. So she fell further behind. So they looked at what might work better. And they looked at effective intervention and an enrichment framework that allows for fluid movement in and out of groups based on student need. How? Well, you assign the interventions, mechanisms needed for both the assessment of progress and for moving between groups. If students are still experiencing the intervention life sentence, still sitting in that classroom for 9 minutes a day after several years, then possibly education plans are either 1, not using the appropriate intervention, 2, implementing the interventions without fidelity, or 3, failing to monitor progress and make adjustments. One ways that we're telling our schools and parents, we're encouraging them to not, again, boxes. We have these boxes that say you are, as long as that period lasts, not so much in elementary. We do pull out in elementary, but when you get to middle school, high school, it's kind of like you're out all period or you're in general ed all period. We're encouraging people to use minutes differently. And rather than say 50 minutes a day, 90 minutes a day, the committee decide on a number of minutes for the semester, the quarter, or the month. And then each child goes to regular class. They belong to that regular classroom. The teacher pulls them out as they need to. Some kids may need a lot of support. So maybe they start off the first 10 minutes or go the last 10 minutes of every class day. They go out to that resource teacher who provides them some extra support. Some children will do great if they're preloaded, if they are taught all those terms and ideas ahead of time. So they may take them at the beginning of a unit and preload them. And then they go to the whole unit in class, and maybe they pull them out to help them review a test. Or maybe it's a class where they missed a major concept. And so they talk with that special ed teacher, and you use some of those minutes to reinforce the concepts or to reteach the ideas. So you aren't assigned somewhere for a block. You belong in general ed, and then the teacher supports that other teacher as needed.
Mostly on the planning. And then also that this model kind of is dependent upon your structure of your school. So you've got to have those enrichment, and your school has to have those systems in place where they've got times for enrichment and intervention, and the students can move fluidly in between systems, because and that also kind of changes the culture of the school, where you don't know if that student's receiving special ed or if that student is receiving special enrichment.
Right, because they're exposed. And I know I have one district, most of my districts are Southeast and Southwest. In their middle grades, the kids never get pulled out of general ed. They do any kind of intervention they need in that RTI, or that intervention time that schools build in now.
Yeah, and lots of schools do have that now and are going toward that way.
Yeah.
But so if you look, what we'll talk about now briefly towards I know we don't have very much time. We provided you a document that you can easily access some resources. So Anna, if you don't mind going a couple of slides ahead to that QR code. Can y'all see? Let me know when you see the QR code.
It says helpful links.
Helpful links, yeah.
It's hard to just say, this is what you should look for on your IEP. Because we're saying get out of the box, they should be different. What you should look for is that you first decided to change any barriers that might be in that student's way. You have to decide whether what we've been doing is for the teacher or for the student. And then you have to follow the IEP. And one thing we tell schools a lot is some of this may be hit and miss. You're going to start off trying with more inclusive things. You might find a child needs some more support. You meet again and you modify the IEP. Because the child we know should be doing their school day should reflect what the IEP says.
And it's got to be needs-based, of course. And my
Mhm.
my students' needs is different than your students' needs. I mean, so so there's not a cookie cutter template for an IEP is basically what we're trying to tell you. But there are some scenarios that we can share with you, and you guys can research these to your heart's content. Let me know. I can't see you guys because I'm looking at
We can turn that
the
off now, can't we?
presentation. Yeah, I guess we can. Do you guys see the QR code? And I want to give you the opportunity to look at it and to open that up before we go back one to the slide.
And you can use your phone.
Yeah, you can use your phone
gonna do
to access that link. Anna, can you go back now to the next page so I can direct you? Great. Okay, so if you will, Anna, go down and go ahead and click on that first link, DESE OC homepage at the very top. So this is the Office of Special Education's homepage. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but if you know anything about our web pages, they're sometimes a little difficult to navigate. So we thought this would be helpful if we would kind of let you walk through it. If you'll scroll down, Anna, under, you'll have to get in the middle. There you go. Perfect. Keep going down. There are some boxes there, blue boxes. Go into the middle. You see where it says parents, inclusive practices, and presentations. All three of those links are could be super helpful to you. If you'll hit your back button again. Yeah, Family Guide to Special Education. Those are all really good. Inclusive practices, that's a whole website.
And this is our new push. That's our logo for all in inclusive practices.
But go to the presentations page. And all of these little individual things are linked on that tiny URL I shared with you. There you go. Presentations now move down to Arkansas moves toward more inclusive education. And then the second one, inclusive practices, possible ways to meet the needs of students. Go down to presentation slide there. If you'll click on presentation slide, great. Now scroll down to, let's get to that third slide. Anna, you're doing a great job.
You are.
So this is the schedule of services page. And let me just a brief, all of these, what I'm about to tell you, all of this stuff can be found on the presentations page under how to write measurable goals, things like that. So what happens is you write, y'all write the school will write the PLAF, and the PLAF, it shows the students' needs. You take those needs, write measurable goals that meet the students' needs. And then you go to the schedule of services page and you start figuring out how it is you're going to provide those services to the student based on the goals that they
And
need.
what you should see on the IEP.
And so if you go down, let's see, 1, 2, go down to slide 6. No, just kidding. Keep going. Sorry. Okay, slide 7. We'll just kind of help you walk through how to read this.
There's a whole lot of these, so we're just going to go through a few of them to
Probably
make you
even just
familiar.
one.
Yeah.
It says Mr. Goodbook has 24 students in his 7th grade literacy class. Okay, go to the next slide. And I'm sounding bossy. Tell me to be not bossy.
You're fine.
There are 8 students with IEPs in his class. Okay. So he's in a co-teach classroom with Miss Smiley. And each day they have a 50-minute literacy class. So they co-plan, they co-instruct, and they co-assess for the class. They're equal partners in the instruction. How would we document the services on the IEP? So go to the next page. And that's what it looks like. Now go look what Robin circled here on the slide 11. Co-taught 50 minutes, 5 times a week, regular classroom. Does that count against the child's LRE? No. Why is that? Because the child is sitting next to students without IEPs. Mr. Goodbook and Mrs. Smiley, special education teacher, co-teach each day. Okay, so now what if Mr. Smiley or Miss Smiley took those four students with IEPs and took them back to the side of the room by themselves, and they're not with special education or general education students receiving general education services? That would count against the LRE. It's who the student is sitting beside.
Mhm.
So, can that be done? Yes. Should it be done? Maybe. You don't know. I mean, but it can be written.
Mhm.
Your IEP can be written to reflect that. So we encourage you to go to these
There's all,
presentations.
what she did was brainstorm all different kinds of ways you could serve children inclusively,
Yeah.
from your more profound students to your less affected students. And I want to make a disclaimer right now,
Mhm.
at least I get in trouble. When we showed the boxes and co-teachers one of those boxes and we put an X, we weren't talking about getting rid of co-teaching. Co-teaching is still a really good method.
Yeah.
It's not the only method though. And what we hear from schools all the time is, oh yeah, we have inclusion, we have co-teach. Like that's the only way you can include. Some kids aren't going to fit that mold and benefit from co-teaching.
Right. So we wanted you to have these resources. Like I said, that QR code has the link to the tiny URL, and I've just kind of made it super easy for you to go in and look at some of those things, so you don't have to do a deep research
Right.
dive. But we've only got a few minutes.
And there's also a site on there called I think it's Differences Are Natural. That's a parent site created by parents.
Yeah, and there's a video, that
Yes.
Robin shares with everyone. Robin is the lady that we work with that does a lot of the inclusive practices training.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, if you go back to the slide where it has the helpful links in the presentation, Anna.
Hey, I'm just, I got lost. Okay, so I'm on the website. How do I exit out of that without it interfering with the slides? Can you guide me on that? Is it just exit out of it?
I think you can,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's try that. Well,
Well, and
think
that's
that's
okay.
fine.
That's okay.
okay, it
Um,
kicked me out.
There's a video on there if you haven't seen before.
And look again, like I said, if you want to open up this QR code, it are all the links and resources that we're talking about.
Mhm.
One of them is the video, Don't Limit Me.
Don't
One-
limit me. If you haven't watched that, you
It's
need to watch
great.
that. Yeah.
And then one of them is other parent resources about disabilities. And then our last slide was just the book that we've been referencing like crazy.